the God of the universe, Ishwar. The third quarter of the Atman, called Prajna, is identified with the third quarter of the universal consciousness called Ishvara. Ishvara is omnipotent and, therefore, he is regarded as the source and the end of all creation. This Prajna is the causal state of the universe, both outwardly and inwardly. Macrocosmically, we regard this consciousness as the creator of the whole universe, while microcosmically, the very same consciousness is the creator of this internal world of the Jiva. This consciousness, as the cause of all things, is also the Lord over everything. Isha Sarveswaraha. Now, this epithet, Sarveswara, as also the other qualification, Sarvagnya, omniscient, cannot be attributed to the Jiva, because the Jiva is not Sarveswara and so not also Sarvagnya. The Mandukya Upanishad seems to make no palpable distinction between the individual and the cosmic, and it harmonizes the relation between Jiva and Ishvara. The causal condition of the Jiva, namely Prajna, is regarded only as a part of the cosmic causal state of Ishvara. To this Upanishad, there is only one reality, and the distinctions that we usually make between the cosmic and the individual, between Ishvara and Jiva, are overcome in the higher analysis of the Upanishad. It is all God, and God alone, Ishvara everywhere, and the Jiva has no place to exist apart from being of Ishvara. So, when you describe the nature of God, you have also described the nature of all creation, including the contents thereof, together with all the Jivas. We need not describe the drop separately when we describe the ocean. And so, the ocean is being described here, the ocean of causality that is designated as Ishvara, from whom proceed Hiranyagarbha and Virat. Isha Sarveshwaraha. This is the overlord of all, the master of all things, supremely powerful. Isha Sarvagnya. This being is all-knowing, omniscient. Nothing can be hidden from the perception of this being. Ishvara is omnipresent, and so he is also omniscient. Therefore, also he is omnipotent. The all-pervading presence of Ishvara explains his omniscience. The Jiva is not characterized by this knowledge because of its being localized in spots in space, because of the mind of the Jiva not being capable of moving outside its own body, because of our thoughts being confined to our personalities. We are, as Jivas, Ekadesika, present only in one place, while Ishvara is Sarvagata, present everywhere. The knowledge of Ishvara is not a cognition of objects, and no cognition or perception can be regarded as a part of omniscience, because the objects of cognition do not come under the control of the cognizer necessarily. Though we cognize objects outside, we cannot be said to have a power over them fully. We see the whole world with our eyes, but what power have we over the world? Our knowledge does not bring us power, though it is often said that knowledge is power. Knowledge is power, but not sensory knowledge. It is some other knowledge altogether that can be equated with power. Sarvanyatva becomes identical with Sarvashaktimatva only under a given condition, and not always. Though we may have vast knowledge in the sense of learning or information, we cannot be said to have power over the things or objects of this type of knowledge. While the Jiva's knowledge is sensory, perceptual, and cognitional, Ishvara's knowledge is intuitional. While the Jiva's knowledge cannot be identified with the existence of its objects, Ishwar's knowledge is identical with the existence of everything. While Sat and Chit unite in the being of Ishwar, they get separated in the case of the Jiva. This is the reason why the Jiva is neither Sarvagna nor Sarveshwara. The reason being that the world is outside the knowledge of the Jiva. Though the Jiva seems to have a cognition of the objects by a process artificially brought about through the relation of space and time. The knowledge of Ishwar is above space and time and is non-relational. The Jiva's knowledge is relative. Ishwar's knowledge is absolute. Ishwar is, and his being itself is all knowledge and power, while the Jiva's being cannot be equated with knowledge and power. The Jiva's existence is separated from its knowledge and knowledge from power, while all these are one in the case of Ishwar. So it is only Ishwar who can be called Sarveshwara and Sarvagna. And the Mandukya Upanishad, while describing the third pada or phase of the Atman as the cause of all things and qualifying it with the epithet Sarveshwara and Sarvagna, obviously refers to the universal Ishwara. Ishayoniha Sarvasya Prabhavapyayo. He is the womb of all things. All things come from him as the tree comes from a seed. The tree may be vast in its extent in space, yet it is all hidden in its potentiality in the seed. The future structure or the shape and the nature of the tree is already determined by the content of the seed. It is not that some new thing comes up when there is germination of the seed. Whatever was in the seed, that alone comes out in the form of an effect, namely the plant and the tree. The universe is self-determined in the sense that it is already contained and fully present in the being of the causal state, Ishwar. Thus, in a cosmic sense, we may say that everything is determined forever. No change can be brought about in the cosmos by effort of any kind, because all efforts are the activities of the Jivas whose existence and function are controlled by the seed, namely Ishwar, from whom all this comes. Omniscience includes knowledge of the future, and if the future is going to be indeterminate, there cannot be any such thing as omniscience. We cannot say that the future can be changed by individual effort, and the so-called change that we try to introduce in the future is already known to Ishwar, and all our efforts of the future are determined by the will of Ishwar. So, while there is freedom of choice from the point of view of the Jiva, it is determination from the point of view of the will of Ishwar. While we seem to change society, God knows already the changes that we are going to introduce, the why and the how of it. Thus, it is cosmic determination from the point of view of Ishwar, but from the standpoint of the activities of the Jiva, it appears to be a process of change with an indeterminate future. God, Ishwar, therefore, is all-powerful, all-knowing, the seed of all things, the beginning and the end of everything. Prabhavapyayo hi bhutanam. Everything comes forth from him and everything returns to him. And everything is sustained also in his being. Our movements cannot take us outside the body of Ishwar. Even if we travel millions of miles in the distant space to the stars, we are within the body of Ishwar. We cannot go outside it. Let our thoughts, let the soul fly into the heights of the Empyrean, or come down to the nether regions. It is within the purview of Ishwar's knowledge and is contained in the being of Ishwar. Whatever be the freedom of the kite to fly to the skies, as long as it's tied with a rope to a peg on the earth, its movements are restricted. Our freedom seems to be within the radius of the operation of our prarabdha karma. And beyond that limit, we cannot go. We have freedom, but limited freedom, not absolute freedom. It is a freedom that a mother gives to her child. The child has a freedom, but within limits. Beyond that, the mother will not make any allowance. Ishwar gives us freedom in the sense that there is capacity in us to understand, ratiocinate, and judge situations. But all these judgments are determined by the law of Ishwar, and we cannot overrule that law. We have to abide by that law. And if our egoism so acts occasionally as to violate this law of Ishwar, then there is a reaction set up. And this reaction is what is called the law of karma. Karma that binds is nothing but the effect of the violation of the law of Ishwar. And abidance by his will is unselfish karma. This is Karma Yoga. When we abide by his will, follow his law, and then act, we perform Karma Yoga. But when we violate his will and act according to the dictates of the ego, we perform a binding karma. Ishwar, therefore, is everything, the coming in and the going out of all things, of all beings. Such is the glory, the magnificence, and the greatness of God, Ishwar, whose integral parts, organic limbs, are the jivas, and all things animate or inanimate. The distinction of living and non-living beings, the inorganic and the organic, do not obtain in the realm of Ishwar's being. For him, it is all consciousness. There is no jadatva or dead matter for Ishwar, because it is his being. He permeates all things. He is Antaryamin. This is the causal condition of the universe, corresponding to which there is the causal experience of the jiva, called prajna. The individual causal state is prajna. The universal causal state is Ishwar. The individual subtle state is Tejas. The cosmic subtle state is Hiranyagarbha. The individual gross state is Vishwa. The cosmic gross state is Vaishvanar or Virat. Ishwar is often understood as that total being in which all the cosmic states are united. The Transcendent Presence. We have made an analysis of the three relativistic phases of the Atman, both in its individual and cosmic aspects. But reality as such is neither individual nor cosmic. To say that it is cosmic is also to limit it to a certain extent, to bring it to the level of what we call creation. The Supreme Brahman, the Absolute, is not a cause and not also an effect. It has no effects and therefore it is no cause. We cannot call the Supreme Being as even a cause of things, especially when we consider that everything is identical with it. The Mandukya Upanishad describes not merely the gross, subtle and causal conditions of the manifested consciousness, but also consciousness as such. There is something called reality in itself, independent of relation. Even Ishvaratva is a description by means of a relation to the universe. We call God Sarveshvara, Sarvagna, and Sarvashaktiman because we relate him to the creation. God is omnipresent, pervading everywhere, which means that we recognize him in terms of space. He knows all things, means that there are things which he knows, and he has power over all things, means that he can exercise power over something which is external to him. All definitions, even the best ones, such as creatorship, preservership, and destroyership of the universe, omnipresence, omniscience, and omnipotence are relative. They are tatastha lakshanas of God, accidental definitions, not swarupa lakshana, the essential nature of reality. What was God before creation? That would be his swarupa lakshana, or essential characteristic. God, in his own essence, is something more than a creator, preserver, or destroyer, more than a cause of things, more than even an overlord, all-knowing and all-powerful. What is that essential essence which is by its own right and abides in its own greatness, in its own majesty? What is that light which cannot be beheld by others, the light which shines, but shines not upon anything? That is the state of pure consciousness, which is neither causal nor subtle nor gross. It is neither outside nor inside. It has no external nor internal. That grand reality is described in the 7th mantra of the Mandukya Upanishad. This absolute is known as the Turiya, or the 4th state of consciousness, transcending all relational manifestations, causal, subtle, and gross. While the waking consciousness is external and the dream consciousness is internal, this consciousness is neither external nor internal, because it is not either waking or dreaming. It is neither internally conscious nor externally conscious. Nantah prajñam, na bahih prajñam. Not internal consciousness like dream, nor external consciousness like waking. One may think that it is a consciousness simultaneously of both the states. No, it is something different from a simultaneity of consciousness. It is not external, not internal, not a simultaneity of both either. No, bhayat prajñam. It is not also a mass of consciousness like a homogeneous heap of water in the ocean. Na prajñana khanam. It is not quantitative in its essence. Quality is spatial, mathematical, and consciousness is not such. Hence, it cannot be called a mass of consciousness. Also, because when you think of mass, you think of a heap, a body, indistinguishable though. Not so is consciousness. Na prajñana khanam. It is not featureless consciousness without any awareness. Na prajñam. You may think that it is awareness without an object before it. It is not even that, because the object is contained in that consciousness. It is not consciousness bereft of objects. It is consciousness into which the objects have been absorbed. So, it cannot be regarded as a featureless transparency of an ethereal consciousness. It is also not absence of consciousness. Na aprajñanam. It is not a state of inert perfection which the schools of thought like the Jnana and the Vaiseshika describe. It is not unconsciousness. It is not absence of consciousness. It is not bare consciousness. It is not a mass of consciousness. It is not external consciousness. It is not internal consciousness. It is not both ways consciousness. What is this? Such is God in His essence, the Absolute in its true being. Adrishtam, invisible is it. One cannot see it. Whatever by the effort of the eyes cannot visualize it. Avyavaharyam. One cannot have any kind of dealings with it. You cannot touch it. You cannot grasp it. You cannot talk to it. You cannot see it. You cannot hear it. No kind of business can be established with it. You cannot have a relationship with it. It is unrelated, non-relational, is it? It repels all relation. It is neither friendly nor inimical. Such is the mystery of the being of all beings, agrahyam. It is not graspable by the power of the senses. You cannot catch it with the hands, smell it with the nose, taste it with the tongue, hear it with the ears, see it with the eyes. No such thing is possible. Alakshanam. And therefore, indefinable is it. You cannot describe it. No definition of it is possible, because what is definition but an association of qualities which you have seen, heard, etc.? but there is something which you have not seen, which you have not heard of. How can you have a characterization of it? There is, thus, no definition of this being of beings. No one can say anything about it. Achintyam. It is unthinkable by the mind. You cannot form a thought of this being. You cannot therefore meditate upon it in the usual manner. You cannot think it, because to think would be to bring the object to the realm of space and time, to externalize it. It is not an object, and it is not in space and time, and so it is not thinkable. Avyapadesyam, indescribable, ineffable is it. You cannot speak its glory with your tongue. No scripture can describe it. No saint can explain it. Not even the wisdom of the sages put together can be adequate to its greatness. It is beyond all the wisdom of the sages. It is peerless, incomparable. This character of the being of this reality is due to the fact that it cannot be referred to by anyone else. This world is a network of references. One thing is referred to the other for the purpose of definition, understanding, and dealing. The whole world of business is a realm of references made to others. Here, however, no such reference is possible. It is a silence of all activity, both of the body and of the mind. Ekatma pratyayasaram. Here, we have a wonderful characterization of the Atman. The Atman can be defined only as the Atman. You cannot define it by any other form or concept. It is said that the battle between Ram and Ravan was incomparable. To what can you compare the battle between Ram and Ravan? You can say that something is vast like the ocean, endless like the sky, bright like the sun, sweet like sugar. But like what was the battle between Ram and Ravan? It was like the battle between Ram and Ravan. This was all that the poet could say. Space is like space. Ocean is like ocean. And the Ram-Ravan battle was like the Ram-Ravan battle. So, also, is the Atman. The Atman is like the Atman. You cannot say that Atman is like this or that because it is incomparable. And any comparison attempted would be a reference made to something that has come out afterwards as an effect. That would be a travesty of affairs indeed. Therefore, it can be designated only as Ekatma pratyayasaram, the essence of the consciousness of selfhood and oneness. It is, if at all, definable by three interesting terms: Ekatva, oneness; Atmatva, selfhood; and Saratva, essentiality. It is the essence of all things, and it is one, and it is the self. It is the self, and therefore it can only be one. It is the self, and therefore it is the essence. The self is that which knows itself not by means but by its own existence. It is existence knowing itself without any external proof. Perception, inference, verbal testimony, comparison, etc. do not apply here in the case of the knowledge of the Atman. It cannot be inferred by logic, induction or deduction, and it cannot be perceived, it cannot be compared, it cannot be described by words. It is the self, which means that it is not beheld by someone else. The self is beheld by itself alone. Here, self and existence mean one and the same thing. Existence is self. Existence is the Atman. The self is non-objectifiable, non-alienable from its own essence. The knowledge of the Atman is intuition, which is a non-relational apprehension of reality, independent of the operation of the senses and the mind, where existence becomes identical with knowledge, and knowledge is one with the known. Here, the object of knowledge is the same as knowledge and intuition. When the object stands outside knowledge, it is called perception. This is the difference between intuition and sensory cognition, or information. where the object stands in an immediacy of relation with knowledge. It is intuition. One cannot say whether it is the object that knows itself or the knowledge that knows itself. The difference between their characters vanishes as when two oceans join together. The knowing subject and the object of its knowledge come together in a single coalescence of being. This is Atmavatva, selfhood. Salila Eko Drashta, says Yajnavalkya, Brihadara Nayaka Upanishad. The Atman is like an oceanic flood without a surface or a limit. The Atman is the sole seer, knower, beholder, experiencer, without a counterpart objective to it. It knows itself, not others, for the others are also a part of itself. Hence, knowledge of the Atman is the knowledge of the whole of existence. It is not knowledge of this Atman, this self, that self, this person, that person. It is the knowledge of the Atman, which can only be one. The Atman is single, ekatma pratyayasaram. The one Atman is called the Paramatman, as distinguished from the multitudinousness of the so-called Atmans, called Jivatmans. It is Paramatman because it is the Supreme Self. Brahmati, Paramatmati, Bhagavaniti, Shabdyat, says the Srimad Bhagavat. From the absolute, universal and personal standpoints, it is called Brahman, Paramatman and Bhagavan. In itself it is the Brahman, the absolute, and as the supreme creator, preserver, destroyer, it is the Paramatman. As the beloved of devotees, it is Bhagavan. It is all this, Dvait, Vishisht Dvait and Advait points of view come together here in this Atman, and the conclusions of the school of thought merge into the single truth of a blend of various standpoints. Quarrels cease, arguments come to a stop, philosophies are hushed, silence prevails. This Atman is silence, said a great master. When a devotee came and asked the Guru, "Tell me the Atman," the Guru kept quiet. When the disciple queried again, "Master, tell me the Atman," the Guru kept quiet again. A third time the question was raised, and the Guru kept quiet once more. When for the fourth time the disciple put the same question, "Tell me the Atman," the Guru said, "I am telling you. You are not hearing, because silence is the Atman." In that great silence, all the turmoil of the cosmos is calmed. All the clamor of the senses, all the noise of the universe is contained and absorbed in this silence. The silence here is better than all the sounds that one makes, and it explains things better than all the speeches that one utters. This silence is a fuller explanation than all the logical arguments of the philosophers. This silence of all silences connotes reality in a more comprehensive manner than anything else, because when we express it in words, we come down from its level to a lower grade and begin to think of it as an external object. The Hindu Upanishad warns us when it says, "It is not known to those who know it, it is known to those who do not know it." If you think you know it, you do not know it. And when you know it, you do not think, but you simply are. You have become that, and you are that, and that is real knowledge. Knowledge is not expression, but being. It is not becoming or a process. It is called Satta, Samanya. In the language of the Yoga Vasisht, the general existence of all things, as distinguished from the particular existences of bodies, minds, and individuals. It is the transcendent being which cannot be called either as this or that. It is neither Sat, existence, nor Asat, non-existence, in the ordinary sense of the term. It is not Sat or existence in the sense of some object being there. It is not Asat or non-existence also. We say that something is because we see it, we can think of it, we can hear it, we can catch it with our hands. And reality is not such a type of existence, but thereby you cannot say that it is non-existence. It is beyond Sat and Asat. Anandamat, Param Brahma, na Sat tan na Asad, Uchyate, says the Bhagavad Gita. This Brahman, the origin of all things, is non-temporal eternity. Na Asat Asit, no Sad Asit, says the Rig Veda. What was there in the beginning? Not existence, not non-existence. Definitions are given by persons, and all persons who give a definition of reality can come afterwards as an effect. Who is to define that which was prior even to the cause of all things, antecedent even to the condition of Ishwar? Who can describe it? And what can you say about it except only characterizing it tentatively as ekatma pratyayasaram? How do you grasp this Atman? By knowing it that it is. Asti iti eva upalabdhanvya, as the Tha Upanishad puts it. Know it as that which is, said Saint Augustine. What is the reality of all realities? That which is, the general existence. Satta samanya ekatma pratyayasaram. This is Brahman. Prapanyakopsamam. Here, all samsara, all this tumult of creation subsides, like waves sinking into the ocean, as dream is withdrawn into waking consciousness. The universe, in all its conditions, gross, subtle, and causal, ceases here. In this state, there is neither the Virat, nor Hiranyagarbha, nor Ishwar, because there is no creation. This is the Atman, where there is neither waking, nor dreaming, nor sleep. This is called Prapanyakopsamam. It is not a condition. It is beyond all conditions. It is not a state of affairs. We do not know what it is. It is a mystery. Wonder of all wonders is this. Wonderful is that disciple who can comprehend it from the wonderful teacher who can teach this wonderful being. Ascharyavat paschati vadati srinoti, says the Tha Upanishad. What a glorious being is it! The Prapancha, this vast cosmos, ceases there, and that alone is shining as the glorious sun of all suns. It is Santam. Peaceful is that state. No worries, no anxieties, no pains, no sufferings, no births and deaths, no agonies of any kind can be there. It is not the peace born of the absence of sound or the absence of contact with things. It is a peace which is positive in its nature. We say we are peaceful when nobody talks to us, none disturbs us, and we have everything that we want. This is not the peace of the Atman, because our concept of peace in the world is purely negative and, again, relational. The Atman is non-relational peace that cannot be put an end by its passage of time. Our peace on earth has a beginning and an end. Today we are peaceful, tomorrow we are not. We cannot afford to be always peaceful, but the peace of the Atman is eternal, and most blessed is that state. It is Shivam. It is the only thing that can be called really auspicious, designated by the most blessed terms, Om and At. Pranav is its designation, in its self-comprehensiveness. Advaitam. Non-dual is that state. We cannot even call it as the one. It is not two. That is all. Because to say that it is one would be to denote it by a numerical figure. It is not one, because there is nothing other than it. We can only say it is not two. Advait. The Upanishad, after having said that it is Ek, one, now says that it is Advait, non-dual. We should not call it as one or Ek, because one has a relation to 2, 3, 4, etc. It is non-relational. Therefore, we should not describe it even as one. It is not this, not that. Neti, neti. It is not this and not that. Not anything that we can think or understand. Chaturtham manyate sa Atma. This is the fourth state of consciousness, which is called the Atman. It is called the fourth, not numerically, but in comparison with the three relative states of waking, dream and sleep. When you go to this fourth state, you do not feel that you are in a fourth state. You are then in the only possible state. It is the transcendence of the three, not in a fourth, but in a numberless, figureless, quantityless, immeasurable being. This is the Atman. This is our essential nature and the essential nature of all things. We are the Atman, which does not wake, dream or sleep, which does not restrict itself to the outer or the inner. The Atman is the sole being of all beings, existence of all existences, Sat of all Sat, Chit of all Chit, Anand of all Anandas, supreme existence, consciousness, bliss. Sa Vijnanyaha. This is to be known. This is the purpose of life. We live here for this purpose and we have no other aim in life. All our activities, all our business, all our functions, whatever they be, are conscious or unconscious attempts on our parts to realize the Atman. And until and unless we reach the Atman, we cannot be happy. We cannot be satisfied and we cannot put an end to the cycle of birth and death. We are perpetually both, and we perpetually die to train ourselves for attunement of our being with the Atman. Births and deaths are processes of training in the field of experience. We experiment with the things of the world with a view to visualizing the Atman in them, coming in contact with the Atman in the objects. We love things because we hope that the Atman is there in them, but we do not see it there because it is not in one place only. Why do we love things? Love persons? Love objects? Because we have a hope that the Atman is there and we go for it. We do not find it there, and so we go to another object. Perhaps it is there, like the gopis searching for Krishna in different places. Krishna, are you there? Are you here? You know where. He's everywhere. The gopis queried the trees, the plants, the bees, and even the inanimate things. Have you seen Krishna? Has Krishna passed by this path? Where is Krishna? Can you give an indication of Krishna's whereabouts? Madly did the gopis ask of everything in creation, animate and inanimate. Do you know Krishna? Have you seen him? In a similar manner, madly do we go after the things of the world. Is the Atman here? Have you seen the Atman? Can you get the Atman here? There? Is this? In that? It is nowhere. It is not in anything particularized, and therefore we cannot get the Atman by any amount of search in the world of objects, the outer world of objects. So all the loves of the world are futile in the end and are bound to be frustrated, doomed to suffer because of this erroneous approach to reality made through the objects, to which reality cannot be confined on account of their inherent structural defect. And in this experimentation, we die. Life is too short. The experimentation does not end. In the next birth, we do again experiment with things because the objects in creation are infinite. We make infinite experiments and the struggle goes on. This process is called samsara, transmigration. And in all the lives that we take, in all the deaths that we pass through, the Atman cannot be seen, just as the gopis could not see Krishna until he himself made a will to appear before them. Nobody could inform the gopis as to where Krishna was. I do not know. I do not know. This is what all objects will tell you. What are we asking for then? We have never seen it. And, considering this enigmatic situation of the quest for the Atman, the Upanishad finally said that perhaps it can be realized only by him whom he chooses. You have to leave it to itself. You do not know how you can see it. There seems to be no means of knowing it. Nothing in the world can be of a help to us in knowing it. Yam eva isha vrinuti tena labhyah. Whom it chooses, he alone can obtain it. This seems to be a solution arrived at by the sage of the Tha Upanishad. We are tired of the quest, and when the gopis were fatigued in the ardous quest, when they became unconscious in their utter surrender to Krishna, he revealed himself. Now the time has come. The ego has gone. Effort has ceased. One cannot do anything further. Then he comes. You search and search and search, and you realize its futility. The ego realizes its limitations and it ceases. When you know your limitations, you cease from all egoistic effort, and the cessation of the ego is the revelation of the Atman. God comes when the ego goes. When you are nowhere, he alone is everywhere. He takes the position of your personality. You vanish, and he comes in. Not before that. When the personalities of the gopis vanished, Krishna took possession of their hearts, and instead of the gopis being there, Krishna was there. The jiva expires into Ishwar. This is the Atman to be known, the goal for which we live in this world. This is the fourth state consciousness, the Atman, the Absolute Brahman. The Atman as the Pranava. The Atman is the content of the meaning of Omkar, with which the Upanishad commenced. This Om, which is all, the all-comprehensive. Name designates this all, which is the Atman. The Atman is the designated. Om, Pranav, is the designator. As there are three relative phases of the Atman, there are three relative phases of Om. U, Ma are the three constitutive elements of Om. Just as waking, dream and sleep may be regarded as the constitutive elements of the manifested form of the Atman, Om, in its three-syllabled constitution, is manifested. Padamatra, Matra cha Pada. The feet of the Atman are the matras or the syllables of Om, and vice versa. The matras or the syllables are Ma, Akara, Ukara, Makarati. So, Yamatma, Adhyaksharam. The Atman is the overlord of this Akshar, imperishable Om. Adhimatram. It is also the lord of the three syllables, Ma, which may be compared with the three states described of the Atman: Jagrat, waking; Swapna, dream; Sushupti, sleep. This supreme Atman, as the designated, is comparable with Om, with its matras, Ma. And we have to learn how now these syllables are comparable with the three states. And also, just as there is a fourth transcendent state beyond the three states of the Atman, there is a transcendent state of Om too beyond the three syllables U, Ma. As there are four states of consciousness, there are four states of Omkar, each one respectively comparable with its corresponding counterpart. What is the first state of the Atman? It is Vaishvanar. The Vaishvanar or Vishva is the first manifestation of the Atman, which can be compared with the first manifestation of the three-syllabled Pranav or Omkar. The Jagrat Asthan or the waking condition of the Vaishvanar is the Prathampad or the first foot of Pranav or Om. Jagrat Asthan Vaishvanar Ukraha Prathma Matra. The Jagrat Sthana or the waking condition of the Atman, called the Vishwa or Vaishvanar, is the first syllable of Om, Akar. Aptiradi Mad Vadva is comparable in a very peculiar way with the first phrase of the Atman. All states of consciousness, relatively speaking at least, begin with the waking state, in which the other states, vis-a-vis dream and sleep, may be said to be comprehended. From the point of view of the Jiva, not from the point of view of Ishwar, the waking condition is the cause, and dream and sleep may be regarded as its effects. If dream is the effect of impressions of perceptions in the waking state, sleep is a condition in which all the unfulfilled impressions are wound up into a latent state, ready for manifestation subsequently. In this sense, we may say that the waking state is the beginning of the other states. Likewise, is the beginning of all letters, the first syllable in the series of letters in the alphabet, and in this Akar, all other word formations are said to be contained, because the moment you open your mouth to speak, the sensation is towards the utterance of and thus it is regarded by the Upanishad as the beginning of word formation. This beginning of word formation is compared with the beginning of experiences in consciousness, which is the waking state. This condition of the Atman in the waking state is comparable, therefore, with Akar, the first syllable of Omkar. And the Upanishad also says that by meditation on this harmony between Akar of Om and the waking state of the Atman, one achieves the fulfillment of all desires. Apnoti ha vai sarvan kaman. One becomes also the foremost among all persons and almost the beginning of all things, in the sense that everything comes to that person, even uncalled for. Aditya bhavati. This achievement of the yogin by meditation is described also in the Mandukya Upanishad in the context of the description of a technique called the Vaishvanar Vidya. Though the Mandukya Upanishad is very brief in its description of Vaishvanar, the Mandukya Upanishad goes into great detail by way of a clarification of the Vidya or meditation on the Vaishvanar. By meditation on this cosmic state of the Atman called Vaishvanar, the yogin achieves a power which cannot be faced by anything else in the world, and everything comes to him without his asking for them. Real power is that which summons things even without expressing it in words. You do not tell a person, do it. He simply does it. And that is the height of all power. This is achieved by meditation on the Vaishvanar. Ya evam Ved. One who knows the secret of meditation on the harmony between Akar and the waking state of the Atman, who meditates on the Vaishvanar Atman, as designated by the first phrase or syllable of Omkar, becomes a master over all things. A perfected Siddha does he become, and he is an adept in yoga. This is in relation to the waking state, Jagrata Sthana, which is Vaishvanar Prathampad Akar, which brings about result of this nature when one resorts to meditation in this manner. Now, the Upanishad proceeds further to a comparison of the second syllable of Omkar, namely U, with the second phase of the manifested Atman, namely Tejas. Ukara is the second syllable of Om, which can be compared with the second pad or foot of the Atman. The Ukara is regarded as Utkarsh, or elevated, in the sense that it is beyond Akar, proceeds after Akar. In the series of the letters of the alphabet, U comes after, as an effect, as it were, of the pronunciation of Akar. And while Akar may be regarded as the commencement of language, Ukar is the middle of all vowel formations. When you utter U, you find that the middle of the throat begins to function. It is elevated, symbolically, says the Upanishad, in the sense that it is above Akar, in the process of word formation. So also is Tejas, or dream consciousness, that comes afterwards as an effect of the waking experience, proceeding from the waking experience, existing midway between waking and sleep. Ubhayat Vadva. It is Ubhaya, or both, in the sense that it has two sides, namely waking and sleep, from the point of view of the padas of the Atman, and it is between Akar and Makar from the point of view of the matras, or syllables of Omkar. Thus we can compare in meditation Ukar with Tejas, the dreaming consciousness. These comparisons are made by the Upanishad to help one in meditation, so that one can bring Omkar in juxtaposition with the states of Atman. All these comparisons are symbolic, and we should not take them literally. All meditations are symbolic. All Vidyas of the Upanishads are symbolic, as the comparison of Brahman to the rope and the world to the snake seen in the rope, in the analogy of the snake in the rope, is symbolic. When you say Brahman is like the rope, it does not mean that Brahman is long like the rope. The analogy is limited to the symbology intended, and likewise we have to take this comparison as a symbology to help meditation on the unity of all names and forms, comprehended in the unity of Omkar with the Atman in all its phases. Thus, Ukar, being elevated above Akar, existing midway between Akar and Makar, is comparable with the dream state, which is elevated above the waking state as an effect of it, and exists between the waking and the dream sleep states. Utkarshati Havai Jnana Santatim. And one who meditates in this manner rises in his status of knowledge. As U is raised over and dream is raised over waking, the knowledge of the meditator rises above all the ordinary informative understanding of the schools of thought. He becomes a real knower, a jnanin, by meditation on the unity of Ukar with the Tejas. Samancha Bhavati. Just as there is an equilibrating effect of Tejas in relation to the waking and sleep states, in the sense that it is conscious like waking and yet not externally conscious in the same sense, just as there is an equalizing effect of Ukar between Akar and Makar, one who meditates thus becomes an equalizing factor in society and in all creation. One becomes a harmonizing element everywhere. There is no conflict in one's mind then, and one does not create conflict in society when established in this meditation. One has peace within oneself and creates peace outside too, on account of the radiance of peace emanating from oneself. The meditator becomes a spontaneous peacemaker. His existence itself is a peace-making. He need not say anything in the world. In his presence, conflict cannot arise, and turmoil ceases. Vexations and emotional tensions come to a close on account of meditation practiced thus as an equalizing factor of consciousness between waking and deep sleep, through the syllable U of Ukar, says the Upanishad. Not only that, Nasya Brahmavit Kule Bhavati. So purifying is this meditation, such an effect it has upon the meditator and all those connected with him, that in his family no one who does not know Brahman can be born. He will have only Brahmavids in his family on account of the effect of this meditation. His blood gets purified so much The very cells of his body are charged with this super physical knowledge to such an extent that an idiot child cannot be born to him. What is a child after all? It is you, yourself, reborn. Atmavaye, Putra Namasi. You yourself are reborn as your child in some other form, and your knowledge will be communicated to the child, and because of this meditation, when it takes effect, you become flooded with knowledge. You become knowledge itself. Rather, it is not your body that is reborn. It is knowledge that is reborn. You do not merely pass on the chromosomes or blood cells in the birth of a child, but you pass knowledge. You get inundated with spiritual knowledge to such an extent that you cease to be a mere physical body. The physical body vibrates as a body of knowledge. Such is the power of this knowledge. The family is nothing but the generation of your children, which the Upanishad says should be one of knowledge alone. Therefore, your generation, your posterity shall be a series not of bodily children but children of knowledge. Amritsya Putraha. Such is the glory of this meditation. There is, then, the comparison between Makar and the deep sleep state of consciousness. Sushupta sthanaha pragnyo makrastritya matra. Makar is the third matra of Om, and it is comparable with prajna, the third state, causal of the Atman. Mitra pitarv. It is the measure of all things, and it is the dissolver of all things. When we chant Om, Akar and Ukar merge in Makar, as all the impressions of waking and dream merge in prajna, deep sleep, the causal state. Just as you end this chant with Makar, you end all experience in deep sleep. And as you can repeat the chant subsequent to the closure of the recitation by Makar, waking life commences once again as an offshoot of the deep sleep state, which is the cause of waking. Deep sleep can be called the cause of waking in one sense, the effect of it in another sense. The waking is due to the agitation of the unfulfilled impressions lying buried in the deep sleep state. In this sense, we may say that waking is an effect of the state of deep sleep. Deep sleep is the cause, and all experiences in waking and dream are its effects. As Ishwar is the cause of all things, the deep sleep state seems to be the cause of our waking and dreaming, in one sense, namely, that we wake up from sleep on account of unfulfilled desires. If all our desires are fulfilled, we would not be waking up from sleep at all. Why should we wake up? What is the purpose? There is something unfulfilled, unexecuted, and therefore we wake up. The prarabdha karma agitates, urges us into activity, wakes us up into the world of objects. Thus, in one sense, prajna, sleep, is the cause of experience through vishwa, waking, and tejas, dreaming. But in another sense, prajna may be regarded as the effect, because prajna is nothing but that state of consciousness where all the impressions, unfulfilled, unmanifested, lie latent. And these impressions are nothing but the consequences of perception and experience in the waking state. In that sense, the condition of deep sleep is an effect of waking. Makar is of that nature in Om. We may say that the chant commences with Makar or closes with Makar, as in the series of chants of Om. Just as we can have a series of chants or recitations of Pranav, we have a series of wakings and sleepings, and wakings and sleepings. The sleep state measures miteh, all things in the sense that the waking and dreaming experiences are determined by the impressions that are there as sanchit karma in the anandamay kosh, causal state, manifesting itself in the sleep state. The sanchit karmas are those group of unfulfilled samskaras and vasanas which are there in the state of deep sleep. Prajna, and would sprout forth shoots in the form of experiences in waking and dream. In this sense, we measure our experiences in terms of tendencies present in the deep sleep state. The dream and the waking experiences are measured by the potencies already present in the state of sleep, as unfulfilled vasanas and samskaras. It is therefore the measure, miti, of experience. And so is Makar regarded as the container of the processes of chants. Just as the contained is supported by the container, Akar and Okar seem to be contained in Makar, with which one closes the chant. Just as all experiences get submerged in the deep sleep state, even as all our efforts cease when we go to sleep, the recitation of Pranav ceases when Makar commences. A and U merge themselves in Ma. Minoti hava idam sarvam. One who meditates thus has the capacity to measure all things, that is, to know everything. He becomes Sarvagnya. He becomes Ishwar himself. He becomes the measure of all things. He becomes the yardstick for the cognition of everything in creation. Everything is referred to him. He does not refer himself to other things. He becomes the reference for the whole of creation, the center of all experience in the cosmos. Apiccha bhavati. Everything merges in him. As the verse in the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita says, everything enters into him as rivers enter the ocean. Ishwar is the merger of all creation, and when you become Ishwar, the whole creation merges in you. You realize this state by this meditation on the unity of Makar and Prajna, the causal state of Pranav and the causal state of consciousness, both individually and cosmically. Now, as there are 3 relative conditions of the Atman, Jagrat, Swapna and Sushupti, waking, dream and deep sleep, Akar, Ukar and Makar of Pranav, or Omkar, may be regarded as its relative conditions. But, just as there is a transcendent state of the Atman which has been described as Nantaha Praknyam, Na Bahe Praknyam, No Bhyataha Praknyam, etc., there is a transcendent condition of Pranav or Omkar which is not constitutive of matras or syllables, but is amatra, without any measure or syllable. Even as we cannot designate the Atman as either this or that, so we cannot specify this amatra condition of Om as either this or that. It is a vibration of being and not a state of sound, and there is no material content in its vibration. It transcends the physical, the subtle, and the causal states. And it is not even merely the vibration which sets creation in motion. It is subtler than even the causal vibration with which creation commenced. The only word the Upanishad uses to name this state is amatra, immeasurable. As the Atman is ungraspable, unrelatable, indescribable, unthinkable, so is this amatra condition of Omkar, measureless in every way. This Om, in its 4th or transcendent state, is Atman itself. There is a soundless state of Pranav that is existence itself. All sounds and vibrations merge into existence, and existence is one. We may call it Pranav in its amatra state, or as Atman in its indescribable state of being. Pure existence is the merging together of Pranav and Atman. Amatra chaturthaha avyavaharyaha. The 4th state of Pranav is that with which we cannot have any dealings, as with objects, words or sounds, such as in connection with usages in language. Prapannakopa samaha. All the world of sound ceases here in this soundless state of Pranav. Shivudvait. It is most auspicious, blessed and non-dual, like the Atman, because it is the Atman. Omkara Atmaiva. This Omkar, which is soundless, transcendent, is the Atman itself. It is another name for the Atman. creation and the creator become one here. The merger of Om in the Atman is the merger of creation in the Absolute. There is no creatorship here because there is no created. There is no sound that is supposed to be the first vibration of creation. Sound reaches the soundless state. It becomes then relationless. Samvisatyat manatmanam. One who knows this secret by deep meditation enters the Atman by the Atman. We do not enter the Atman by a gate. We enter the Atman by the Atman. We do not enter the Atman enters the Atman. We do not exist. We evaporate into the Atman, and the Atman becomes the Atman. Sounds merge in Pranav, it becomes the Atman. The Atman alone is. When the Atman becomes the Atman, through the Atman, it is called Atma Sakshatkar, realization of the Atman. It is also Brahma Sakshatkar, realization of Brahman. From this point of view of the Atman animating the individual states, we call this achievement Atma Sakshatkar. From the standpoint of this very same Atman animating the whole cosmos, we call it Brahma Sakshatkar. It is self-realization and God-realization at one and the same time. It is existence. It is consciousness. It is power. It is bliss. It is perfection. It is immortality. It is moksha. It is kaivalya. This is the goal of life, the path to which is beautifully described in the Mandukya Upanishad. The Mandukya is the essence of all Upanishads, a study and assimilation of which alone is sufficient to lead one to emancipation. Mandukya mekamevalam, mumukshunam, vimuktiye. For the liberation of the seeker, the Mandukya Upanishad alone is adequate, if it is properly digested into experience. You should not merely listen to it and then forget it. You have listened to an exposition of the glorious meaning of the Mandukya Upanishad, and I wish that you absorb it into your minds and make it a part of your practical life. Let this knowledge, which is so rare, so difficult to acquire, not go waste. Do not throw it to the winds or to the wilderness. Even if you cry aloud, it would be hard for you to gain this knowledge. It is such a rare asset in this world, and when you get it, do not lose it. Do not forget that you have it. Imbibe it by deep reflection. Make it a practical means of your living in this world, so that your life may be converted into divine life, so that you may become veritable divinities walking on this earth, spreading peace everywhere by your very existence, so that you may become Bhudevas, gods on earth. He is a real Brahman who knows this secret, who has this knowledge, who lives this knowledge, and to whom this knowledge is practiced, to whom action is not different from having this knowledge, where karma and jnana become together in a fraternal embrace, where there is no friction between work and contemplation, where life becomes realization, where work becomes worship and God consciousness, where one's very existence becomes a blessedness to all earth, where one's life on earth becomes a teaching, where example becomes a precept, and where one becomes a representative of Ishwar in this world. This is the grand gospel of the Mandukya Upanishad. And my prayer to the Almighty is that He may bless you with all a remembrance of this knowledge, that you may not forget it throughout your daily living. A wonderful knowledge, as the Chandogya Upanishad says, which should not be equated even with the treasures of the whole earth. This knowledge is greater than the wealth of all the world, a savior of humanity from the thraldom of finite life, a direct means to moksha, immortal existence, the great goal of your lives.